Okay, I'm live. Good evening, friends. Well, let's see what we've got going here. I figured I'd live stream because I got an idea for the next shot in my show. I still need to do some just hunkering down and working on the script, but tonight I feel like animating. So, recently we had this shot followed by this shot. I know, we need a boat. Okay, so I want to make a couple changes to this shot, and then we are going to go forward with coming back to Mel and Tianara, and with some, well, I'm thinking it'll probably wind up being a pencil test animation actually, but we'll see. I may reuse this shot. I'm going to definitely reuse the background and stuff. So anyway, okay, Luca. As I look at the acting on this shot, it seems to me that I want to keep his more wide-eyed look right through to the end of the shot. So, with that in mind, what do we got here? We've got Luca, and yeah, this would actually definitely be better if he didn't change his expression. So, what do we have? I didn't move him this way with a transform mask. So, that means all of these drawings probably are going to have to get scrapped. And I'll just have to rotate it. So, okay, so there's his mouth. So I think we're going to want to take the shadows, ink, the erase layer. I guess that's for the flatting. We can keep that. Well, actually, we probably shouldn't, because that's going to be wrapped around the wrong drawing. Okay, so there. That was easy. So now all we got to do is go A key, grab this center point, and maybe we'll scale it up a tiny bit. Okay, let's just check. Yeah, okay, that works. So the only problem is obviously his mouth. So we'll just make the requisite adjustments. And see how it feels. Oh, geez. Okay. Yep, we'll get rid of these as well. I just don't like it as well. And so what we will do is we'll take the ink and the color and control drag these guys downstream to here, and then here we'll go ahead and do the eye blink. It's actually one of those shots that almost feels like maybe it wants almost wants a double eye blink, but of course we could do that if we want to. So B key. Now let's just erase the people. And looks like we got one concurrent viewer. Who's hanging out? Who's here? Oops. That would be a mistake, because I kind of hard coded the, I believe with a curves tool, I think I baked the color change into the ink, so I want to make sure I match that. Alright, G key, E key. So I'm going to just erase this. And we will have we're almost there. Then we'll take that, put the blink in there, and you see how that feels. I like that. I like that much better. Hey, Amar. Just sketching in the background, huh? Working on those, well, whatever it is. Fantastic Four, or whatever the characters are that you're working on. Cool. I like it. Save that. Okay, so now there's something I want to consider. Well, I had an email exchange with my distributor, and to my surprise, so I asked him point blank, I said, look, it's been 2 years. Based on your read on the market, how has your estimate of the earning power of this show changed? And to my kind of shock, he's like, if you're talking about earnings over 1 year distribution, they haven't changed at all. So I'm like, oh, okay. I really didn't expect that. I figured it'd probably be a more muted estimate at this point. I'm like, okay, if the numbers you're thinking could work are going to work, then I trust your judgment of the marketplace, and let's rock and roll and go to distribution. Okay, so why does that matter, for the story I'm sitting here telling? Well, it matters because it suggests to me maybe take a few more liberties with Salt and Light. One thing I'm considering, for example, is maybe bumping up to 12 frames per second. And that would be a palpable change. But you got to remember, in episodes 1 and 2, there's a lot of shots that for editing purposes, I actually squeezed them down and made them run at 12 frames per second. Sometimes 10, actually. But so here's why you might want to do that. And Darren mentioned it on his live stream the other day, is that it really makes tweening and recoil with the liquify tool extremely, you can really add a lot of animation smoothness with just really quick, simple tweens using the liquify tool. So what do I mean by that? Well, so he's thinking, now before he goes up like that, well, I mean, there's a few ways you could approach this, actually. One would be to just put a tween right there. But, okay, so if you're going to do this, what you'd probably do, let me think about this. Look at how that flows. Boom, bap. Yeah, actually, I think the way to do this is, before I actually go any further, I want to make sure that there's no, yeah, see, I want to make sure there's no layers that are not pinned to the timeline, because if I'm going to move them around, excuse me, as a group, then kind of important to make sure I'm able to select all of the keyframes. So I'm going to double click that column, which selects the whole column, and I'm going to actually go Shift Alt, and okay, and now that I want it to select the whole column, it doesn't. Okay, that is stupid. Krita, really? God, it's like everything you everything you want it to do, it wants to do the opposite. Okay. I wonder if we can do it a different way. Actually, I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to go hold frames. I'm going to insert multiple hold frames. I never do this, but let's just say we're talking about probably about a quarter of a second or so. We'll go with 4. That's about a third of a second. So let's see what that does. Okay, that did kind of what I expected. What I really wanted to do was get those guys all rippled downstream. So what I should have done is I should have made that move one frame earlier. So that's okay. Lets you, at least Krita lets you insert empty frames, which is pretty good. So I wanted to have, boom. Yes, I wanted to have this. I wanted to have a hold here. So I'm going to grab this whole column and do the same thing again. So hold frames, we'll insert multiple hold frames, and I don't think 4, or I'm going to actually insert 8. I can always take them back out. So I wanted to have him think for a second. Boom, boom. Okay, so now what we can do is we'll go here and grab the entire group, hit the A key, hit the liquefy, and I'm actually just going to do a recoil frame. So he's actually going to pull back one frame. Yep, that works. Okay, and then we'll take this. I'm going to grab all of these manually. And then I'm going to stick a tween in here to get us from here to here. So probably the most logical way to do that would actually be to go control drag, move this. Okay, if it'll take. Okay. And then on this frame, we'll hit the A key, and we're just going to kind of do a similar thing. We're just going to go just a little bit of a squish. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is playing around at 12 frames per second, we've got a little more latitude to see everything's like super smooth. That's pretty cool, actually. Okay, and now as long as I'm thinking about it, let's go to this frame. And yeah, we might as well go to this frame, hit the liquefy tool again, and just fix this little problem. So hey, Sifter. There we go. Look at that. Smooth as silk. So there was another frame that had the same issue. I think it was way back at the beginning too. Yeah, right here. So, I mean, again, as long as we're here, we might as well just fix that, right? So just little drag. Okay, and then here, unfortunately, what we probably should do here, yes, is just take the color frame and copy it. Now we may have this problem all along here. It looks like we do. I tell you the truth, I'm not sure why I actually have all these keyframes, because it never changes. Oh, I see. It's because he's blinking. All right, I better undo that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do is, I guess we'll just do it the obvious way, which is go to the color frame and just go like that. And then the safe way to make this change is actually, instead of doing that again, what I really should have done is done this. Go back to this frame, select this area that I need to repeat, and then just go forward and go Control Shift V, which pastes it into the color frame. So that's definitely a safe way to make sure that's going to be exactly the same. That way there's not going to be any inadvertent animation chatter in that channel. Okay, so that little bit of recoil feels pretty good. Not sure what's going on up here at the top. Let me turn off the background. Okay, that looks like that's got something to do with the yeah, the erase layer didn't actually yeah, the erase layer didn't actually erase all the flatting, so I'm gonna hit the G key. Doesn't really matter what color we use. Okay, that didn't work. Oh, I see why. It's because we have a selection. That was silly. So we'll just go like this and like this. And we probably would, yeah, it would behoove us to just go through the whole shot and make sure there's, because who knows what artifacts I may be introducing with this. The fact that it's black instead of gray doesn't matter, because it's an erase layer. So anything that's colored in is going to be erased. And for those who are confused, this is just a layer that was created at the start of the shot to work together with the flatting layer to just give me flatting on the character. So okay, so now we can unsolo that, and now that's interesting. What the heck? Is that in the flatting layer? Okay, that's in the shadow layer. Oh, I see what's going on. The shadow layer, somehow the alpha lock got turned off. That's not acceptable. Alright, so we save that. And, I know. We need a boat. Okay, and so now the obvious problem is that the whole shot isn't long enough. Well, if we're going from 8 to 12, we need to go from 60 frames to 90. So we'll see if this is something I'm going to want to stick to or do more of, but as long as erase layer, that's a new one for me. Yeah, what I did was I just created this layer, which doesn't animate or anything. It's just paints the whole thing in gray. The reason it's bouncing around the way it is, really, in truth, the flatting layer should look like this. Sample that color, hit the G key, and just make sure it's all colored in. So after I did the pencil test, I added the flatting layer. Actually, I should say after I did the ink. I did the ink lines, no color, and we'll take the hand out because it's got the color baked into it, so it's sort of an exception. But when I was at this point, I added the flatting layer below it, and then I put the erase layer above it. And so then what I did was I hit on each keyframe, I would hit the magic wand and click, and that would create a selection around my character. And I'm trying to think, I want to make sure I describe the way I did it when I did it. Yeah, if you were doing flatting the other way, the Ed Tadeo way, you would click outside of the character, which makes a selection, and then it obviously if it leaks, you're going to see marching ants inside the character. So that's just kind of your fill check. So you click out here, you've got marching ants all around the perimeter of the character, and then you hit Control-Shift-I to invert the selection, and then you would use your G key, freehand path tool, to just draw a lasso around it, and it'll fill it in gray. Now, I didn't want to do it that way because the way I did it, it's a little more robust method in my opinion. So what you do is you just got a simple, gray layer in the background. So then you click anywhere outside the character, puts the marching ants around it, and then you just do a fill of any color on, on a new layer, and then put the layer into erase mode. By having it in erase mode, it means anything that has any color at all in that region is going to be erased. And so boom, instant flatting. I mean, it really is very, very quick. And so you get that useful effect. I can see a little bit of a hiccup there with the color. I don't know if that's reflected in the color as well. So anyway, the only reason I did flatting is so that I could, once the character was inked, I could slap the background in and see what I had. Right? So that's that. Okay, so now the color, let's just check. Yep, there is a flaw there. So let's fix that while we're thinking about it. Control, and I guess I'll hit the G key and just try to lasso that. Okay, why did that not fill? I want to stop everything. Okay, it looks like it did. Oh, I see what the problem is. Okay, that's interesting. The problem is the erase layer. Yep, sure enough. So this is all sort of niggly, busy work that I really shouldn't be having to do, but apparently at one point there was one frame in my erase layer where I was a little careless. So now I'm paying for that. So I'm just erasing back into the erase layer, which gets rid of the color, which means what I just erased no longer erases. No longer erases the the area outside the the character. So that's a little confusing. It's kind of like a double negative. All right, so shadow, turn the shadows back on, put the hand back in, put the mouth back in, and I think we're good to go. So we can save that. Okay, so now, you know, kind of interesting because now we have a 12 frame per second shot instead of 8. Oh, look at that. Darn it. We're actually having to deal with a major bit of fixing up here. We can solve it actually, I think, by turning off the erase layer and turning off the flatting layer. That actually solves it because the whole problem that I'm having right there is just because of the stupid erase layer. There was just a little bit of paint that was incorrect. And now we do have a little bit of chatter as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these layers because I really don't need them in there anymore. And the chatter is unacceptable, so we're going to have to look and see where that got introduced. Yeah, okay. So here's the solution, friends. I don't want to get into what I often refer to as sort of a rigging approach where you're breaking your character into pieces. You can do that, but how about that black area between the arm and the body on the one frame? Yeah, right there. That's what you're talking. That's what I'm talking about too. So here's the solution. It's pretty easy, really. If this is the pose I want, let me just look at this. Okay, actually, let me make one more amendment that has nothing to do with the problem we're addressing. Because as long as we're here, we might as well fix this. Okay, so now that's fixed. So let's go to the next frame, and this is the frame we want to keep, is this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ink layer, and I'm just going to make a selection of this area right here. Control C, and now in the ink layer, I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to delete, and then Control Shift V. Okay, go to the next frame, delete, Control Shift V. So all I'm doing is deleting whatever's there and replacing it with the correct ink line from the frame that I know was correct. So this is a bit of a pain in the butt and really shouldn't have been necessary, but apparently at some point I was a wee bit careless. Okay, so this is going to look a little off for a bit because we have to do the same thing in the color layer. You probably knew that, but same thing, just hit Control C on this layer, and then delete, Control V. Delete, Control V. Delete, Control V. Delete, Control V. And I think there might be 2 more. Okay, so and again, that's just, I was careless. I didn't notice that before, so there it is. Okay, so now if we put the background back in, I think we have a finished shot here. Okay, other than that little problem right there. And I would say the solution for that is going to be the same darn thing that we just did. Yeah, we can't just copy the keyframe over because this is what the comment I was making about getting into a rigging approach where you're breaking things up too much. You can do that, but I just don't want to if I don't have to. So the problem is that the eye blinks, the change in his face, is what changes in these 2 keyframes. So instead of just copying the keyframe over, which would cause the blink to disappear, because you're just duplicating it. So what I'm going to do is the same thing I did before. I'm going to just select a region, go to here, delete what's currently there, and Control Shift V, and that may have actually introduced a problem. Yep, it did. Okay, and that's not unexpected. That's, again, kind of my fault. I didn't select a large enough region. We've got to select a large enough region from the area that we know doesn't change. So, to be honest with you guys, I didn't really know I was going to have to do this, but there it is. Okay, ink, same situation. Control C here, and then delete, Control V, or Shift Control V, I should say. That's important because we're pasting into the same layer, the ink layer. All right, Let's see what we have now. Okay, so now one thing that comes to mind, since we're just kind of refining this shot, is that we really probably want, first of all, this pose would be more effective if it had a blink. Yeah, right here, probably about there. So I'm going to say ink layer and color layer. Let's duplicate them. So it'd be boom, blink. And then, honestly, I could be wrong, but I think moving everything else downstream a little bit would be good. So then right here, we're going to want to stick a blink in there. Okay? So ink layer. Probably the easiest way to do this is just to erase. Okay, really? Am I in the wrong layer? I'm in the ink layer. Why in the world? Okay, that was weird. I'm in the ink layer, and yet it took out the color. That's really strange. Oh, I see what's wrong. I'm not in erase mode, stupid. Okay. Sometimes I'm just smart enough to know how dumb I am. Okay, so sample that color, hit the B key, and this is going to be easy peasy because all we got to do is just put in the blink like that over top of the color, and the pupils give us a nice guide for where to do it. And then we sample that color, hit the G key, and change the color. So now that should be, I like that. See, now that's got some sparkle to it. That's got some life to it. Little things like that can be quite nice. Okay, and so now here's the thing. This really should go here too. Before you get this recoil and then a move, especially with a tween, it really makes sense to have a leading blink. Okay, so we're kind of getting into more sophisticated animation technique here, really, that I usually don't do because I'm always locking myself to that, 8 frames per second. So now, Tom, the shot you just worked on has a black gap between the arm and the body. I know what you're talking about right there. You're talking about that. That was actually intentional. I would kind of agree with you, though, that it probably doesn't look that good, but that's actually intentional. That's just the background showing through. So we could try doing it this way. We could actually have his hand like that, and then, I will say that the thing about 12 frames per second is it's way more forgiving than 8 frames per second in terms of just everything's on the screen for, I guess 50%. Well, I guess mathematically it'd be 33%. But anyway, everything goes by quicker, so you can really get away with more in terms of little tweeny things. Okay, and so since I'm being picky here today, I actually want to additionally look at the hand layer, right? I mean, of course, we could kind of get away with it here, but because it's a 1 frame tween at 12 frames per second, but here we probably want to be a little pickier. So I'm going to hit the E key and just shave off that somewhat ridiculous little pointiness. Now, again, if you want to be picky, we should probably get rid of it here too, but it's all good. All right, save our work. And let's see what we've got. Okay, so now if we wanted to really punch this up, we would probably want to consider doing that. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to get the humor of that sort of, little dumbbell moment. So, but that's a nice looking shot, and it's cool because the smoothness increase in the animation is all just really quick and dirty liquefy tweens, just to basically smooth out the motion. I like it. All right, let's save that. Now we're going to render it. We're going to have to reinsert it into the show, however, because what's currently in the edit is a 60 frame shot. Seems like the upper arm would be there. I'm going to override you on that one. I'm perfectly fine with, I mean, the upper arm is hidden back here, right? So I'm fine with how that flows. Now, if I was going to be a little pickier, I'd probably say consider getting rid of the rotation there and actually have that be more consistent in terms of the angle of the arm. I don't actually like that. That turn is a bit of a tough sell. But I'm going to keep playing with it here just a little bit. That's interesting. It's definitely a nice pose. Yeah, I like that. Okay, have we got too much of a jump here? Got a small tween and then a big jump. This is one of those rare cases where I almost think a proper in-between that's like, you know, mathematically right between might be better. I like it. Let's let it run. I'm going to let it circle around here once or twice. Yep, I like it. So thanks for the ideas there, Tom. I don't know which one of your ideas I used or didn't use, but it's always fun and useful to get a little bit of input from the crowd, you know. So let's jump to the show. Tom, I'm going to really try to remember to look at the chat and make sure that I don't forget to you know, switch back to the blasted proper screen. So okay, so I need to import Luca, save early, save often. Yeah, I have to say that you know, Krita's been pretty freaking stable. I don't know if it's because I've really been just favoring you know, layer operations and not going too far with you know, things like transform masks. But okay, that's the wrong shot. What are we doing here? 12? Yes. Sorry about that. I'm looking at the wrong shot. You silly goose. I guess it would make sense that it would be the last one. Boom. Okay, so it's 90 frames. And in this case, we're going to make it 12 frames per second. It's a bit of a change from the usual practice, but the simple fact is, I don't care. I'm just interested in, okay, and I'm going to switch this back right now while I'm thinking about it. I'm just interested in, because I feel like look, if I'm going to go ahead and let episode 1 and 2, you know, go ahead and release them, we're not going to know where we stand with this darn show for 6 months, really. And so in the meantime, to the extent that I'm going to work on it, I might as well just do anything and everything to just, you know, ramp up the quality and just have fun. It was crashing for you today, doing in-betweening on the curves, Docker. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still using 5.0.6, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Okay, and by the way, I just detected a new problem. Look at this. Right there. Look at that. So yeah, we got a little chatter there. You know, and honestly, probably the way I did it is a bit silly, but it's okay. We'll keep going on the path we're on, but there are plenty of scenarios where it would probably make more sense to just take the eyes and paste them into another layer. Now, here's the thing. If you were doing it the way I did the hand, where the color and the ink and everything's baked, and shadows too, are all baked into a single layer, that makes it easy to cut things out of one layer and into another and just start building up a set of layers so that you can kind of introduce animation where you want to without disrupting the rest. In this case, because I'm probably following a better practice by having everything on its own layer, with the exception, of course, of the hand itself, but everything else has ink and color and shadows and everything on separate layers. So because of that, the way I'm making the fix here really does make more sense. And there's your problem right there. So if we look at this, I want to be really careful actually looking at this. That's a big deal, actually. Okay, so here's the thing. The only thing that changes is the blink, so I might as well just take everything because I'm seeing a little tiny bit of artifacting. It's the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't notice, just watching the show. But, oops, we've got to hit delete first because otherwise, well, you saw what happened just a moment ago. You wind up, you're pasting 2 ink lines down that aren't lined up, and you wind up with a mess. Okay, so now we've got the ink fixed, and we'll just go back and do the same thing to the color. So Control C, actually delete, then Control Shift V, delete, Control Shift V, delete, Control Shift V. And the only reason we have to do this is because we've got a static image except for the fact that we've got the eye blinks in there. So actually, the even better solution to all of this would be a second layer just for eye blinks, and I've done this plenty of times, is you just add a new layer for eye blinks, and in the blink layer, all you do is just take the skin color and create a patch and then draw the closed eyes in there, and then you only have that layer visible when he does a blink, So anyway, there it is. I think I got it here. I think I got it. Let's go back to the start and see how things are flowing. Okay, the chatter appears to be gone, so we can save our work. And then we'll not switch screens, but we'll go ahead and check how it's looking in the edit. So, okay, so we got 5 concurrent viewers right now. My viewership numbers are not particularly impressive, but it's always nice to have people coming around and checking out what's going on. So if you're out there and you would care to identify yourself, we would all love to know that you're here, whoever you are. We got Amar, Sifter, and Tom doing art, and 2 other people. So probably, oh, one of them's Ross. Hey, Ross. Good morning to you. Of course, it's evening here, 6:21 p.m. I know. We need a boat. Of course, that wasn't Luca's voice. All right, so that's feeling pretty good. Okay, so now we can finally move on. The next thing on the agenda, I wanted to do, well, we've got this shot here before we go to Luca. So what I was thinking is we come back. Luca says we need a boat. Tia says, where are we supposed to find a boat? So it's arguable that we could actually use this prior shot. I think what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to use, just because of what I'm feeling like doing, I think I'm going to use the background. But I feel like doing a pencil test. So that's my my prerogative. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and reanimate some stuff. Just because I'm in that mode right now, it's what I feel like doing. Okay? So, but we are going to be going back to this basic pose. Or layout, you might say. Okay, so with that, what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that shot right there and cut it to the clipboard. Okay, so let's, this is already saved. So let's just start a new scene. We're just going to start clean here. And we will paste in that because that's going to basically be our guide. And then, of course, we could always pull the background out of the prior shot. Chris K, hey, haven't seen you in a while here, my friend. Good to see you. All right, so there we go. And as per my practice on episode 3, I am going to, and by the way, you notice I just set it to 12, not 8. So I am bending the rules a little bit. We're trying something a little different just because I feel like it. So again, I'll just say, this is all kind of a mind game I'm playing with myself. I'm saying to myself, okay, look, if I'm going to go ahead and release episodes 1 and 2 to, you know, through my distributor, then the reality is that getting episode 3 out is going to be partly a function of what happens in the marketplace. Which means there's no hurry here. And we've got some serious latitude to do some experimenting with ways that we might want to ramp up the quality or modify the production process slightly. Okay? I actually thought about jumping back to the old Akari anime I was working on before I was working on Salt and Light, because that one, by and large, was at 24 frames per second. And it's kind of a fun thing. But anyway, so what we want to do is save this, Control S, and looks like our paths are a little bit whacked out at the moment. So we want to go to Scenes, and then I'm going to hit the E key so it jumps to the Episode 3 folder. And we want to create a folder 0313, and hopefully the 13 will not portend any sort of bad luck. But anyway, Episode 0313, boom. And then what we want to do is go to the render. Hello, Control R. Oh, sorry, my bad. Okay, this is something you guys want to know. Is if you don't have at least one keyframe in a Krita file, so which is accomplished in this case simply by adding a new layer, which is going to be what we're going to put our pencil test on, and just hit insert so there's one keyframe. If you don't have one keyframe somewhere, then when you hit Control R to render animation, it won't even come up because it's going, why would we want to do that? You don't have any animation, so of course you can't possibly want to render it, right? Okay, so we're changing the path to episode 03-13 /render. Krita will create that folder for me, and then my standard practice is to give the prefix on my images the same name as the scene. So we're actually, yes, believe it or not, we are actually rendering out the whole sequence. And that way we can come back over to the show, and I'll try to remember to switch screens. That's actually why I'm saying it out loud, is because I'm giving myself a little reminder. So what I'm literally going to insert the 100 frame sequence into the show so that as we build up the shot, it's going to, it'll just simply update as we go. So right now, of course, it's just one long static frame. Well, I mean, it's an image sequence, but nothing changes, so it looks like one long static frame. Okay. Little bit of an itchy nose because it is still allergy season around here, which is not fun. Till the first frost, baby. I'm going to be suffering a bit. Freaking A, we got 8 concurrent viewers. That's amazing. You know, I'm just not really usually that popular. Okay, I don't think we need this background in there. And this is just merely a guide, so to get us started. Okay, now we're going to follow, I don't know, I guess you might say we're going to kind of follow the Ed Tadeo methodology here, where we're going to, this shot as I see it right now is going to require a little more animation than usual, and I'm basically here to have some fun with that. So we're going to start with just sticks and balls and stick figures. We're gonna get the motion kind of figured out. Excuse me, I'm kind of belching in everybody's ear. The get the motion figured out, and then we're gonna get the structure penciled in, and then we'll deal with the characters themselves. So we want to do the right things in the right order. Okay. Yeah, we've been getting the rain too, actually, and it is not as bad as it was a few days ago. But it's just general life rule is from about usually the beginning of September until the first frost is pretty much the allergy season here as far as the fall goes. You get a little bit in the spring too, but it tends not to affect me. It does affect Valerie. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just get this blocked in. We're going to trace this shot. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Cool. So she's going to go right about there. All right. How do we want to do this? There's many ways to do it, but I'm going to do it oh, come on. That's not what I meant to do. I'm going to do it the kind of mechanical way. Yes. Now, I feel like I want a little bit of a different feeling on the her kind of weight. I want her to be actually leaning back a little bit, so we're going for something more like this. Okay. So now I guess her bosom would be right about there. She's not super well endowed, but it is part of her anatomy, you know, right? So let's unsolo this and let's get an eye line, eyebrow line, nose line, mouth line. Can't hurt to have it in there, right? In fact, let's even put this in. It just gets us started on the right path here, right? So let's think about it this way. This is what the eyebrows are doing. You get it? I mean, that's easy to read. It's like, huh? So it's almost like she's going to do the blink thing too, probably here. So I like this. This is kind of fun. Okay, so I will not tween. In fact, I'm actually going to... Is Ross still here? I'm going to follow Ross's advice. If I'm understanding his advice from the other day when we had the live stream where we interviewed Ross, I think what Ross would be advising me to do here is stay focused on the timing of the important keyframes. Don't get into any tweening. This is an important lesson, I think. Don't be too eager to see things move until you know your roadmap, so to speak. Okay, so now this is actually a mistake. That should be there. So boom. Okay, and I'm going to say at 12 frames per second, I'm expecting there's going to be a bit of a recoil there. So, am I understanding this correctly, Ross? So that's really the idea is, you know, get the keyframes right and then figure out what the roadmap will be structurally from one pose to another, and then obviously the timing and the tweening is part of that. So boom, boom. Okay, so she's saying, it's basically like, wait, where are we supposed to find a boat? So I'm just gonna, because the structure of her head is pretty good, I'm gonna probably reuse this just because it just saves me some work. I don't want to redraw it for no good reason. So I'm just trying to feel it here. Boom. Boom, right about there. Yep, draw your start drawing and your destination drawing, then in between them. Okay, fine. So I'm going to do that. And I am going to cheat a little bit in the sense that I'm not going to redraw stuff just for the thrill of redrawing it. Sometimes I do that, but not here today. Okay, I don't like that. I want more of a cynical sort of tilt to the head. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so now there is one problem here. Maybe, let me look at this. Actually, we probably could put the little hint. Just put a hint of her forearm right there. That probably is going to be okay. So the basic problem we have here, as I see it, is she's going to come back here and her arms just fall down. And there's just this moment of, what? Okay, this frame is not supposed to be there. That was a mistake on my part. So the problem here is that she's falling forward. Okay, so this is something you guys want to think about. I'm just putting it out there for those of you who want to think about these things. If you draw a line through your character, okay, down to the ground, you know, we really naturally, our bodies want to sort of keep our head, you know, balanced. This shot is problematic because she is literally falling over. So if I'm correct that the tilt to the head is kind of appropriate, it's like the right attitude, then probably the body is wrong, because really her body needs to be, we need to get her head over the top of her center of gravity. That's definitely better. And Ross, since you're here, at any time I invite you to you know, weigh in and give me your criticism too. But I think this is something that I've neglected many times in the past, and I'm sure a lot of the people who come around here probably need to hear this. You really want to, if you're drawing a character, even if the character is in motion and, you know, it's like some sort of action thing or something here, like maybe this is kind of Spider-Man, you still want to be thinking about, I guess that is a crappy example because he's more or less flying, but so let's try something better. Whatever you have going on with your character, you want to be thinking about what their center of gravity would be. They are going to have the proclivity to try to keep their head above the center of gravity, and of course you can, part of the tool in your toolkit is to deliberately make them off balance so that you can then use motion to resolve it. But you want to resolve it, you know what I'm saying? So you know, think about what that line is through the character that would suggest to you where their center of gravity resides. Okay, so in this case, this feels pretty good. You know, she's kind of like, huh? And where are we supposed to? Okay, and so getting from here to here is going to be a bit of a trick. Now, we do have a problem that we should absolutely, whenever you're vigilant enough to catch a problem early, you want to fix it like right then. Okay, what's the problem? Well, she's more or less anchored with her head on the rule of thirds here, and I really think I want to keep her there for the most part. So this motion is not really wrong, but let's at least see what would happen if we went ahead and shifted her over a bit like that. Let's see if that, yeah, that actually works. And so this shot, I guess that was it. It was the middle one that was really kind of throwing it off kilter a bit. So instead of just having everything move backwards, we had her head move back, but her body move forward. And then she leans into this. Okay, what I don't like here is look at the contour of her bosom. It doesn't adjust properly. It doesn't adjust naturally to the overall shift in her body weight. Okay, so let's look at this for a half second. Yep. So I'm going to say let's grab actually I'm going to hit shift and just grab this whole region. And now let me look at this. So it's, whoops, I just erased my selection. So it seems to me that you would have a little bit of a move down and a little bit of a rotation in. Something like that. That feels better. Anyone want to disagree? Again, feel free to weigh in. I'm all ears. So she's like, wait, where are we supposed to find a boat? Okay, so where are we supposed to find a boat? I will not be doing another, full drawing for this, but just as a notation to myself, I'm going to say that we probably want to think about, whoops, darn it, that's not what I meant to do. I want to move the center point here, the pivot point. Okay, I don't like that. I think, actually, I may do another drawing because I'm thinking, okay, this is tricky, man. This is a dyslexia moment. I'm going to flip the screen just to give myself a little perspective here. Yeah, because I'm kind of, I know what I'm feeling here. And I'm going to go Control-Shift-I to reverse that selection so that I don't know if this is quite what I'm looking for, but I think it might be. Okay, so she says, wait, and where are we supposed to find a boat? Not bad, not bad. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. I would say I want to erase this bit here in the hair so it's not distracting me, because obviously the hair would sort of fall down. So what I'm feeling is I'm wanting her to cock her head more. I really am. And I just feel like exaggerating it just to see if it works. And where are we supposed to get a boat? Okay, that's too much. Not because it's bad in terms of drawing and animation and all the rest, but just because it feels a little out of character for Tianara. She wouldn't be quite that snippy about it. And where are we supposed to find a boat? That still feels like a bit much to me. That's not bad. Now, let's look at how that compares to this drawing. Okay, okay. Not bad. I'm actually kind of liking this. I'm going to save my work, and then I'm going to render it and actually look at how this flows into the show. Okay? Wow, how the hell did we just go from 4 concurrent viewers to 9 concurrent viewers in 1 second? That's kind of weird. And where are we supposed to find a boat? Okay. It would be worth trying, just for the heck of it, to actually reverse these, just to see how it feels. Okay. So, where are we supposed to find a boat? I actually think that might be better. Anybody got an opinion? Ross, help me out here, buddy. And where are you supposed to find a boat? Okay, if I was going to do this, what I'm feeling here is that this would want to be even more lean back like that. And then maybe this might be the expression I was looking for that I wasn't quite able to find before. Where are we supposed to find a boat? I don't know. Draw outside the canvas and do the whole figure. Yeah, I mean, you actually can't really do that in Krita, if you want to know the truth. In Tahoma, you can. Well, you can if you do what I do, which is I have an HD image on a broadcast HD canvas, but now I like that pose better, so I'm gonna go ahead and reverse them again and just see how that feels. Now that I've made some changes that I feel like made it stronger, what the heck? Where are we supposed to find a boat? Nope, I liked it better before. I'm gonna go with this. I'm having trouble seeing the sketches on my mobile. Sorry. Okay, no problem, dude. I didn't realize you were on a phone. Okay. And where are we supposed to find a boat? Okay, this is a little late. This is fun, guys. I'm looking forward to doing more of this, actually. More proper breakdowns. I don't know if you call them breakdowns. I don't even know what you call them. Yes, I like that. The action feels good. Okay, so let me go back to this now, and we'll call this, well, the proper thing to do would be to call it PT for pencil test, but put it in a group and call the group TIA. Okay? So then what I want to do is add a new layer that's also going to be called PT, and that's going to be the PT for Melchizedek. Okay? So let me sketch in Mel because I've really got some, if you can believe it, I actually think Mel is going to be even more fun in this scene than Tia is because of the way he responds. So again, I'm looking forward to the challenge of animating it and getting the act. Because what I want her to do is say, and how are we supposed to find a boat? And Mel's going to be like, this is kind of a line that is reminiscent of something Sokka would do in Avatar is it's like, I'm thinking along the lines of something like, and more importantly, where are we going to find a river? So I don't know how that's going to play, but I'm going to try it. It's not a big laugh or anything, but it's a bit of a chuckle, you know? So, more importantly, where are we going to find a river? And that's all just a little bit of a tiny, tiny gag to get us into the explanation of what their plan is the next morning. Because they got to get through Grips, and Luca knows the lay of the land better than Tianara, and actually Tia knows it second best because she has traveled with her mother. Mel doesn't really know it at all, and so the idea is that the forest is too thick, so they're not going to be able to. They've got to get to a river, and if they can get through the town of Gripson, there is a river, and if they can find a way to acquire a boat, then they can begin to make a lot better time to Nippur by on a boat, you know. So okay, so Mel's obviously going to be standing there. Zuko, relax there, dude. Okay, Zuko's a little freaked out, and there's really good reason for it because very large road crew is right outside our. You know, we have a really big picture window, you know, in the front, and there's at least 6 or 7 guys out there, and they're repaving our roads. So Zuko's a little freaked out. He'll survive. Okay, so let's look at the timing here. Now, I might be a little remiss putting all of the Tia and Mel action in the same shot. Okay, let's just insert a keyframe. And like I said at the beginning, which I really haven't been doing here, is let's kind of follow the Ed Tadeo method and go back to sort of stick figures to get it all blocked in. Okay, probably, I mean, the wise thing to do would be to get Mel to change his demeanor a bit as he's thinking, but then cut to a close-up. That would be, I mean, it's a chimpy reason to do it, but it would mean that I don't have to re-import the footage into the show. But I actually, when I was thinking about this shot earlier, I was thinking it probably wants to cut to a close-up of Mel once we have him move a little bit and sort of establish that he's the one taking the audience's attention now. But I do want to think about that. So there may actually be a bit better comedic element. Let me think about this. I'm actually thinking we're going to keep it as a wide shot. So that means we're just going to change our frame count. I have no idea, because I'm kind of feeling a bit of a reaction here on Tia's part that I want to see after Mel does his bit. So, okay. So Amar has weighed in to let us know what the proper terminology is. Not breakdowns, but rather keys. And then extremes and in-betweens. Okay. So, thank you, Amar, for clarifying that little bit of... Well, frankly, it was a bit of a mystery. Okay. What do we want Mel to do? Well, first thing we're going to do is mark the extents of some of his geometry. So that we have a starting point. And then again, we're going to do this sticks and balls. So I'm going to turn his head this way, and I'll put in a little bit of an indication of his headband. Let me think about this. It's one of those things where I see it in my head, but it's not crystal clear. And that makes it a challenge. Let me see. I'll just say, what if we had the hands kind of, fingers, you know, kind of pushed up against there, against his face. So let's keep it loose and find it. So this was kind of what I was feeling, is this sort of change in demeanor, and I would say, or posture, or positioning, I would say he seems a little bit slightly large. Yep. So she's like, where are we going to find a boat? And Mel's like, more importantly, where are we going to find a river? Okay. Not totally loving this. I feel like I want to jerk that out a little bit more. And in which case, this wrist would kind of anchor, you know, the arm would be kind of, yes. Oh yeah, that's it. The arm would kind of be, one would be leaning against the other. So, shoot. I'm just going to really keep this loose and see if I can just stumble on the feeling of it. I'm trying to get this idea that Mel, it's like he's taking the whole thing a little too seriously. And he's like, more importantly, where are we going to find a river? So I'm not sure how to play that. It's a really interesting line of dialogue because the right actor could make it pretty funny, and a lesser actor probably wouldn't, or a lesser actor would do it in such a way that tries too hard to make it funny and sort of telegraphs to the audience how they're supposed to feel. And you don't want to do that. That's insulting to the audience. And so you always want it to be a little understated. In other words, his acting and his treatment of that line should be authentic to him, right? It shouldn't be a performance for the audience to try to make them chuckle. Does that make sense? It's a really subtle thing about acting that lesser actors tend to miss. So if you're dealing with budget films like the ones I've made, you do tend to sometimes bump into people who they don't understand these things, and they tend to overact because they feel like they have to tell the audience how to feel, and they don't. They're not trusting their audience at that point, and it's really quite a mistake. So he's just sitting there. He might blink. Where are we supposed to find a boat? More importantly, see, I like that. I like that attitude. There are so many terms. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and loop this. I'm gonna duck out for a couple minutes here, so we'll just turn off the microphone and let this loop, and I will be back in a couple minutes. Okay, I am back, and I guess I'll turn my webcam back on. I'm reading Amar's comments about the intermediate period. Yeah, I mean, if I went back and looked at my Richard Williams book, I'm sure he explains it all quite well too. When you're working all by yourself, you don't really have to have the terminology down, I guess. So now I'm going to throw this out there, you guys. Just because this is unrelated to the animation, but I actually recorded 2 or 3 videos last night where I know that this is going to sound a little kooky, but I have a theory, basically a theory of everything. I have a theory of everything. That's kind of a buzzword these days. And the theory of everything is about why we as human beings, because of the nature of our emotional self, why we do what we do. And one of the key things about this theory of everything is that it really clearly explains why we tend to, another buzzword, manifestation. That's a buzzword in pop psychology these days. It turns out, in my view, that basically manifestation is not really something you have to learn, because actually we're all doing it all the time and we do it automatically, and there's biochemical reasons why we do it. And so we actually manifest in our lives a perfect reflection of who we actually are inside, the real self that we are, that we tend to hide from other people in many ways. And I'm just curious, is that because it's probably something that belongs in a separate YouTube channel, because it's way off the beaten path from animation, but I would post the stuff here, because for people who are doing creative work, who especially who have desires and goals that are either lofty goals that are hard to achieve, or that they think they're hindered in various ways from achieving or getting what they want, there's real good reasons why you're not getting what you want usually. I don't even, personally, I don't really believe it's even usually. I think it's actually all the time. But if that's of interest to people here, I'm just throwing it out there so that if it's something people want to hear, or learn what my view is on how we, why we do what we do, why we get what we get, and how you achieve your goals and dreams, So if that's something that people might find interesting, then I would go ahead and post it here, probably put it in a separate playlist. Okay. So he says, go back to here again. More importantly, where are we going to find that? Okay, so right about here, I've alluded to these ideas in other places a little bit in there's videos on my channel that are called Life Lessons for Creative People. So I've touched upon them, but not really the full Monty in terms of the theory. But to the extent that I've shared these ideas with, I can think of in one case a client of mine who, it's an interesting case where she's at a place where she's, you know, she's 50 years old, and her business has sort of, because she's sort of taken a lot of advice out there from the kind of the blogosphere about how to develop her marketing funnel and blah 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 blah. And the problem is that sometimes when we lose sight of our own desire or our own muse, our own direction that we really find most happy and satisfying, we have a tendency to paint ourselves into a corner and wind up moving in a direction that ostensibly is supposed to get us to where we want to be, but it turns out we're not. And interestingly, if those ideas are not congruent with who you really are as a person, then you might actually get there by brute force, just by muscling through and chasing after a goal or whatever. But you will, number one, be kind of miserable along the way, and you won't be happy once you get there. You know? Pretty crazy. But powerful stuff. Because what you are or are not achieving in your life is, unfortunately, almost completely, sometimes we're truly victims, okay? Sometimes life hands us sour apples and it really isn't our fault and blah, 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 blah. But I posit that usually that story is just a story. Sometimes it's true, but usually it's not. Usually, if you're not getting what you want to get or where you want to get to, it's probably mostly your own fault. And there's good reasons for why and how you've actually created the circumstances that you find yourself in. So, anyway, just saying, to me it's been quite useful. It's actually the main reason why I wasn't live streaming for quite a while, a couple months, is because I was really giving a lot of bandwidth to this topic, grokking it out for myself. And it was weird because I was getting what I can only describe as sort of like brain dumps every day, man. I would get just enough insight each day to sort of give me enough to chew on, and then the next day I'd be like, oh, now I get it, and then the next day I'd get something else, and this kept happening for quite a while. And then it kind of dried up, and quite recently, very recently, like this last week, all of a sudden I had a couple more days in a row where I got a couple more brain dumps, and it's like, oh, okay, I've kind of filled in the missing final pieces to where it's like it all kind of clicked. The self-victimization can be crippling. Yeah. And as I said, I actually created, there's probably about an hour of content spread over 2 or 3 videos that I made last night, and it was a test for me. I just recorded it, and I said, okay, do I understand this paradigm well enough that I can verbalize it? And so I sat there with my paint open, so it's like a infinite canvas, just a whiteboard, and just went through it. And I was pleased that I was able to remain quite cogent about the ideas, even to the point where I was able to dovetail in, some necessary side roads to clarify certain concept that, and yet be able to return to where I started, kind of thing, and I mean, if you guys are interested, I can touch upon some of the basics of it here today if you're interested, but I don't want to bore anybody with a bunch of what might seem like psychobabble that isn't useful. But in my heart, I really have a heart, for lack of a better way of describing it. I have a lot of empathy for creative people who have goals and dreams, but yet for whatever reason seem to not be, seem to somehow, be hindered from, on the one hand, just figuring out what it is they really do want. That alone is actually a fairly massive challenge. Sometimes we think we want something. And the reality is, if you could wave a magic wand and have it, like right now, you'd find out you don't want it as bad as you thought you did, you know? And a lot of times it's only by going down the road and through the process that we can discover that. Okay, let's see what we've got here. More importantly, where are we going to find a boat? Okay, this is slightly small. Hey Dave, maybe sometime if we do another session I could share my screen and go through demonstrating stuff about keys and in-betweens. Absolutely. Definitely, let's do that. Since I'm working on this, I don't want to think about scheduling it at this moment, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to do that. That'd be cool. Anything, you know, for whoever's here, anything that Nagut 40 has to say, you should listen to, because he's a pro and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to animation. He really does. Okay, this pose here is kind of sort of right, but it doesn't quite feel right. I think it's got something to do with, I probably don't mind. Actually, this is not a bad way to do it. Just erase stuff, and then so I see it in my mind. Don't want to be in erase mode. One of the biggest problems that we have today broadly, culturally, is FOMO, you know, FOMO, fear of missing out. And FOMO as manifested in the form of you're constantly being bombarded, especially if you're really active on social media. You're constantly being bombarded with, well, frankly, advertising. You know, sometimes it's not advertising; it's just news. You know, related to like the latest version of Blender or something. You know, which is, of course, you know, it's a free program, so nobody's really making money from it or anything. But the principle still holds that if we, the reality is nobody has ever created anything cool without it being one hell of a lot of work. And sometimes we get sucked into, you know, you see a speed paint or something, and you sort of, and especially if it's about some new feature or something, and we get sucked into this story that the way it makes us feel is that, you know, okay, what's the backdrop of this? The backdrop of this is that whatever it is you want to be or do, you have not successfully done or been, right? Some of it's a talent limitation. I tend to personally think that usually it's not. I think most people, there are limits, but generally most people have the basic ability as a human being to learn how to do them. I mean, everything I do is self-taught, for what that's worth. Like literally everything. You know, screenwriting, animation, scoring, drawing. So clearly it's possible. And I really don't think I'm an exceptionally talented guy. I truly don't. My unique talent probably has more to do with the way I think than any artistic talent that I have. You know. Okay, that finger is pretty out of control, wouldn't you say? So now, if we were going to apply a little bit of animation wisdom here, it could be argued that this pose would be more effective. Let's do this. Let's go, actually I guess we'll go forward one frame. And I'm going to toy around with the idea of, well, actually let's grab a selection here and put it in silhouette. Whoops. In other words, obviously that's anatomically whacked. In other words, in terms of silhouette, this is not a particularly readable pose because the hand is buried inside of the body. Okay, so, whoops, need to be in erase mode. So no harm in trying. I'm thinking I'll just go ahead and I also want to shift this out a little bit. Okay, and I don't like this pose. That's really not the right expression, so I'll just get rid of that and kind of start over. What I'm feeling is more like this, I think. Keep it simple. Your superpower is you think very practically. Not everybody can do that. I don't know. I mean, I do, but you got to remember too, though, that there's nothing I talk about in this arena that is not born of my own experience and things that I've struggled with myself. So if you want to talk about, like for example, this is a little bit of a side road from the whole idea of this sort of like manifestation sort of explanation. But one thing that has been a huge growth driver for me over the past 2 years is unpacking in my own experience the dangers, the seductiveness of ego dividends. Okay, so I learned that there's a real difference between a reward and a dividend. Okay, so now if you have an ego problem, and I believe me, I say this because I have been this guy. Okay, if you have a fragile ego, then what you want to do is you want to craft a narrative that where you're telling yourself and others that you're accomplished, that you're an expert, that you know stuff, that you're capable. And the thing is, it's really easy to go out on YouTube or Discord or whatever your platform is, and it's easy to do what I did when I was doing live action filmmaking. Okay, so I don't want to cast aspersions on any of the people that were in my world at that time, but it is true that I had the tendency to surround myself with people who were impressed with me. Okay, and what that does for you is, number one, it doesn't challenge you creatively. Okay. Number two, it gives you what I call dividends, where you can come away from the day feeling kind of smug that the people around you are impressed with you and think you're kind of hot shit, you know. But what I realized is the reason one does that is because, number one, it's easy. Okay, it's short term. The dividends, the feeling, the emotion of that dividend never lasts. It's only good when it's happening. Okay, So there's a real difference between a reward and a dividend, because a reward is what you earn by doing truly great work, and there's both satisfaction in the work, and in some cases there's also a certain amount of kudos from people that you actually respect because you've done legitimately great work. And that's not easy. I mean, you have to want it. You have to the pain is nothing if you really want the reward. Of course you're willing to experience the pain of humiliation when you do sucky work and you allow someone that you truly respect to call you out on it. So the simple lesson here in this little thing I'm saying now is to understand the distinction between a reward and a dividend. Rewards lead to satisfaction. Dividends lead to gratification. Gratification and dividends are very short term, and because they become a drug for your ego, you have to keep getting more of them all the time. Hence you are going to lurk on social media. You're going to look for people who are impressed with what you can do, and you're going to satisfice. And the reason you do that is because you're actually terrified to tell the truth. The truth is you suck. But it's way easier to surround yourself with people who will tell you that you don't suck and kind of sort of feel good today, just like taking a drug and shooting up, rather than face the harsh reality, especially if you're aging. Like I'm 56 here in a few weeks. When you're aging, it's hard to admit that you've made some that you've done poorly, that you haven't paid the price you should have paid, and you haven't done the things you should have done. Doesn't mean you need to sacrifice your whole life and neglect your family and all this bullshit. You don't. This is, and I'll tell you why you don't, and this harkens back to this manifestation philosophy, this theory of everything that I have. Here's the thing. The person you are today who's experiencing that regret is the same damn person that you were 20 years ago when you took shortcuts then. The reality is you're the same person now as you were then, and you have created the situation you're in now that you're regretting. It's 100% your own fault almost all the time. And that's the bad news. You know what the good news is? The good news is that you can change it, and it's never too late. Because it's like a business timeline. Any business timeline, no matter what business you get into, no matter what stupid stories people have told you about how easy this is going to be or how hard that's going to be, the reality is any business is going to take you. I could unpack, but I won't right now. But there's a pathway that you'll discover in business, especially if you're doing sales work, where there's certain things that happen in about 2 weeks. Well, actually, there's things that happen in about 2 hours, and then 2 days, and then 2 weeks, and then 2 months. But I'm going to jump right to the 2 months. Okay. So as an example of what I'm talking about, if you get on the phone and start doing sales work, you're going to be very, very uncomfortable. Actually, I'll tell the story about sales. Okay. But if you start dialing the phone, what you're going to discover is it'll only take 2 hours to discover that this is not going to kill you, and that actually it's not that bad. Especially if you have a reasonable script, not that you're going to read robotically like a consumer-based telemarketer, but that you'll use as a guide, so you stay on track, right? But it only takes 2 hours to find out that the fear you started with really wasn't justified. It's actually not as scary as you thought it was. And literally, I tell you the truth, people will go their entire lifetime avoiding that 2 hours. They will make any excuse, they will tell any story. Oh, Dave, yeah, that's easy for you, but I couldn't do what you do. I've heard that so many times from people. I am not kidding. I've heard that from people over a 30-year period of time. I've had so many people say to me, yeah, gee, Dave, I wish I could do what you do. You know, get out of the rat race, get away from serving the man, and work for myself, whatever. And I'm like, well, you could, and I'll give you any information I can give you to help you do it. You know, and as some of you who are listening right now know, I have done that very thing recently for some people in this little community. I've told you exactly what you would have to do to get a result to start moving away from the trap that you feel like you're stuck in toward the liberty that you wish you had. Okay? So what do you find out in 2 days? Well, in 2 days, you find out actually this is pretty easy, and I've gotten a couple people I've talked to in these 2 days that are actually, kind of receptive. Like maybe there's some hope here. In 2 weeks, you're going to start getting a number of people in the hopper that are live ones, and you might even close a sale. In 2 months, you will have closed a sale, maybe 2 or 3, and you'll start to say to yourself, gosh, maybe this can work. Okay? If you stick with it, I guess there's also sort of a 6-month point between 2 months and 6 months where you find out, oh my God, this is going to work. I can do this. 2 years, you're never going to have to worry about money again. Guaranteed. You won't. After 2 years, you will have enough successes under your belt. You'll have learned all the hard lessons. And you're just going to know that if I really need to go out and drum up new business and be successful, I know that I can. Now, that doesn't mean I have to. You can stop whenever you want. You can shift gears. You can try something else. It's up to you. But this general pattern of 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, it really holds true. And so that's just an example of a pattern that I've observed that, as I said, most people are going to, it's not, the sad part is not just that they will do anything to avoid that 2 hours that's so uncomfortable. The sad part is the narrative that they will craft to explain away the truth. The truth is they're scared. And people will come up with all kinds of BS to avoid just stating the plain, simple truth is I'm scared to death to just pick up that phone and dial it and face rejection or whatever, And that's the point. The point is that this is what we do. We create narratives. So I'm not getting into the biomechanics of my theory of everything at this point. But I'll give you guys the really, really, really Reader's Digest sum-uppance of it. The sum-uppance of it is this. Ask yourself this question. Look wherever you're sitting right now. Look around and ask yourself what can I perceive? Okay? Now ask yourself, what can I not perceive? The entire universe is in motion. In fact, there's incredible dimensions of motion going on inside your own body, from the atomic level to the galactic level. Everything's in motion. Everything's changing all the time. Okay? So this is just kind of a core principle. What we do as human beings is we observe the tiniest slice of reality, and then we are able to craft a narrative based on what we perceive that is startlingly functional, right? It's amazingly functional. But the narrative that we craft is how we explain our own reality to ourselves. And this is a process that we're all going through 100% of the time. It never stops. You can't not do it. It is actually what makes us human in many respects. So and you can prove it. Ask yourself this question. Of all that is reality right now, how much of it can I actually perceive? Obviously the answer is a teeny bit. And yet, you're functional. right? You can approach a doorknob that looks completely unlike any doorknob you've ever seen before. And yet you know what to do. Well, why is that? Because you're able to extrapolate new information based on what's stored in your memory. And it works really well most of the time. But when you wake up one day and you realize how much of the narrative that you tell yourself about your situation, your reality, how much of it is clearly just plain falsified, just made up, versus objective truth, you will be startled. You will be amazed to look at yourself and realize how much of your life is just a freaking story you've been telling yourself. So that's a nugget. The interesting thing is that when you really unpack the biomechanics of how we store memory, which is basically emotion, what we store that's authentic and accurate is emotion. The data points that are stored with that emotion are always what I call falsy. There's things about it that are true, and there's things about it that are patently false, but basically it's always a really limited data subset, right? From which you craft a narrative. And then sometimes you'll become really rigid about what the facts were. But we know this in psychology. We know that when people report the details of something like something traumatic, for example, that happened to them 10 years earlier that's really affected their life for those 10 years. What you find out is that when people report the facts, at least 50% of the facts are provably false. They're just made up. And what you remember isn't accurate at all. We're spectacularly bad at remembering data, but we're very good at remembering emotion. The emotion is always authentic and always the truth. And that's why we do the narrative, is because what we do is when we remember, or when we're having an experience right now, you have an experience at work, you get into an argument with somebody or something happens, you have this experience. What we do, again, I'm just kind of giving you the brief summary here, is what we do is we look into our emotional memory and we compare it to our sort of database in our subconscious of the experiences we've had that match the experience we're having now. And we pull those out and we feel the emotions. And sometimes the emotions associated with the memory aren't actually that accurate to the experience we just had. And that becomes problematic because then we judge the current situation based on the best job we can do of pulling out the emotional memory that we have. Okay? The emotions from the memory are totally authentic and real, but they're not actually a perfect match. They're just similar. Okay? But then what we do is we invent data, we invent a narrative because we are compelled to come up with a narrative to explain our current reality to ourselves that is consistent with what? The emotion. So we have an experience and then we pull out something that's kind of similar. Not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar. That may be a much stronger emotion, and then what we want to do is justify that emotion. Why? Because in our subconscious, we know the truth that the only thing that is authentic is the emotion. It is the most visceral thing in our memory that is absolutely authentic to who we really are. And we want to preserve that and protect it. And so we create all kinds of narratives to support what gets pulled out of what I call EM, or emotional memory. So I don't know. That's a teaser. But when you start plumbing the depths of the biomechanics of what's really going on in your own mind, both really separating the conscious, intentional, desiring, wanting, feeling mind with the subconscious, which is essentially a non-judgmental, objective data store. But it's not a good data store of data. It's a great data store of emotions. When you start to unpack what's really going on that makes you do what you do, all of a sudden you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh my God, now I realize what I've been doing for the last 20 years. One of the things that's really well explained by this is why people leave one relationship that's dysfunctional and then naturally flow right into another relationship with some of the same dynamics and same problems. It's actually perfectly natural. It's because what's stored in your emotional memory, what actually feels normal to you, is the emotion associated with that dysfunctional relationship. And that's why changing is difficult. Changing is very, very difficult because you have to have some sort of mechanism and methodology to store new emotional memory that's congruent with who you really want to become. Make sense? Kind of, sort of? It's incredibly powerful stuff. And again, when you chase that rabbit around and around, what you find out is the life that I'm complaining about right now that has various challenges, it turns out you not only created them, but actually you've manifested a life situation, a condition, a set of conditions that are completely consistent with what you believe about who you really are inside. This is a bitter pill for people to swallow. Very bitter pill. Most people will not accept that truth. They will take their ball and go home. They will become combative. They are desperately terrified to face the truth about who they really are. And the sad part is, if you would face that truth, it would become so clear to you where you've been going wrong. And if you have courage, you can begin to change it, and you can begin to change it immediately. And you can actually, with various techniques that I could describe, you can begin to store emotional memory and literally, to your subconscious mind, change who your subconscious thinks you are. And by doing that, you will begin to naturally act in ways that are congruent with who you want to become. Again, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version here in a big way, but crazy powerful stuff. And I think I bring it up here because it's super relevant to creative people. People that are creative who, you guys have tender hearts, You guys care about, making things that are beautiful. I get it. You care about, and you care about being validated and acknowledged for the talent you have, and you want to have hope that you can do more, that it's possible for you. And if you have real dysfunction in your past, maybe from your childhood or whatever, you may need to be encouraged that it's permissible for you, that it's actually okay to want what you want, to like what you like, So we're talking about ideas that are as close to the most tender vulnerabilities of the human heart as it gets. It really is as a sensitive an area as people ever have to deal with. And again, the sad part is most people never do deal with it. Most people, when it comes to emotional maturity, literally, I mean this completely literally, most people actually never become adults. In our culture feeds that. Because our culture wants us, through advertising and, by compelling us emotionally with fear of missing out, to buy things and whatnot. A lot of things about our culture are calculated to really encourage people to believe that someone else has the answer, and they don't. There are people that have answers about specific things that are quite helpful and instructive, obviously, right? But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the logistics of how you draw or create an animated cartoon. We're talking about the sensitive person in your inner self who is terrified to find out that you can't do it. Either you're not allowed, the world's going to prevent you, or you don't have the talent. That's a scary thing, and it's easier to go out and get dividends on, on social media for your subpar work. It's way easier to do that than to squarely face your shortcomings, and then face the hard work of overcoming those shortcomings. True about pets, they stay in a childlike state versus adult feral animals. Interesting idea. I've never thought about that. That could be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that, but I could see that. How are we doing on time here? 2 hours. Well, I've been cranking for a good long time. Look up kitten behavior and see how it lasts in pets. Okay, I'll do that later on. I I think about these things, and I gave a lot of thought to them for a hell of a lot of thought for 2 months. I mean, that's why I wasn't live streaming. I was really giving a lot of attention to this. I was determined to succeed in unpacking the biomechanics of why we do what we do and how to change. How can you affect positive change? How can you learn to become a truth teller? Someone who's truly unafraid to be who you are. You know, Valerie's been a tremendous inspiration in that regard because I actually think I just made a critical mistake. I did. I put that in TNR's layer. Well, there's an easy fix for that. Here's what you do. You go in Tia's layer and you go, because we know Tianara isn't here, so that means I can select this whole area and just cut it to the clipboard, and then jump to Mel's layer and hit Control-Shift-V and paste it in. Clever, huh? But this topic that I'm discussing has haunted me in a sense because I have never in my life had such a clear sense that this is something, a set of ideas and principles that need to be shared. And I've been like, I don't quite know where to start with that. You know, maybe I should start another YouTube channel. It borders into the esoteric to a degree, but I really, one of the things I was determined about, if you look up manifestation, if you look up the law of attraction, if you look up things like Esther Hicks or Abraham Hicks online on YouTube, or you look up modern pop psychology gurus like Joe Dispenza, who Joe does probably the best job of capturing it, but there's always a point at which there's a quantum field, or there's either a magical element to it that's esoteric, or there's all this stuff about sort of planting seeds in the quantum field that then return to you through the law of attraction, blah 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 blah. And I really was pretty sure that that's wrong. It's not that those ideas aren't necessarily true in principle or partly true, but but in practice they tend to break down, and the people who talk about those things always, like any religion, they tend to favor the happy stories, so their data is very anecdotal. And I was really determined to say, no, I have a feeling that this is actually just naturally how the human animal or human creature operates, and that this is actually mostly biomechanical. And the deeper I dove on it and the more I looked at, the more I realized that that was exactly right. So people who talk about manifestation are remiss because, and obviously they've usually got something to sell, but the idea is that you can learn how to manifest what you desire in your life. That's wrong. The reality is that you have already been manifesting your deepest. Like, I'll give you a good example. A good example is, I want to make $1 million with a successful business. Okay, but when you begin to unpack your emotional memory, what you're going to find out is when you start to look at the dimensions of what's involved in building a business, the risk, the cost, the things you have to do every day that you may not necessarily be comfortable with doing, when you start to unpack the dimensions, what's going to always turn out to be true is you don't want it more than you do want it. So you say you want it, but you actually don't. It's not that you're being a hypocrite or that you're lying. It's that you have to really unpack the various dimensions of that thing, and what you'll discover is that there's more about it that is repulsive to you than is attractive. Hence, and you can know for sure that that's true. You know why? Because if that wasn't true, you'd already be doing it, because it would be easy for you. The steps of achieving something aren't easy. But as far as getting yourself to do those things, you do them because you truly want to more than you don't want to. It's really that simple. Right? So then you say, if you keep following this through, you start asking yourself, well, then what's the problem in the human condition? And the problem is the narrative. It's way less costly to contrive a narrative about what you say you want, and then continue to contrive a narrative about all the barriers that are keeping you from getting it. That's way easier than doing the hard work first on the psychological side of unpacking what's really going on in your heart and in your emotions that are actually telling you you don't want that. You want the end result, but you don't want the things that would be required to get there. This is why education is helpful, meditation is helpful, visualization is helpful. But the most helpful thing is interrogating your own emotional memory. Breaking it into pieces and looking, like if this is the thing you say you want, start looking at all the dimensions of that thing. And what you're going to find out is, I want this one, which is the money, the $1 million. But the truth is, I don't want this, this, this. I kind of want this, okay. And this is okay too. And if you look at, and the balance of it will be that you actually don't want it at all. And this is an important, wonderful thing to unpack and discover in yourself, because if you do that, you can then finally look at yourself squarely in the mirror and you can say, honestly, you know what? I don't want that. And you know why I don't want it? Because I'm scared. Or I just don't want to do those things. But now I can tell the truth, and now that monkey is off my back, and I don't have to keep going through life telling this stupid narrative about how I wish I had this, and by the way, here's all the reasons why I can't. You'll stop telling stories. You learn to start freaking telling the gospel truth. And you know what? In the real world, in real human relationships, I posit that is vanishingly rare. Vanishingly rare for people to actually tell the truth, especially about themselves. This is why people go to, when you go to, it's a holiday and you're getting together with family. Have you ever had this experience? You get together with family, and either yourself or other people in the family, they can't wait to have the experience where they get together with their family and they tell everybody else in the family about how well they're doing, how well things are going, right? And then once they've told that story and everybody, and they tell it to everybody who will listen, so sort of one at a time they kind of go around and tell everybody this story. Because if they told it to the whole group, it'd be a little embarrassing. It would be like they're obviously posturing here to like tell this happy story. So they do it one at a time. They're a little more clever about it. And they go around and they tell that story, and then they get the kudos and they get the dividends from everyone. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear things are going so well for you. Oh, it's fantastic. I can't believe you're doing that. Oh, that's awesome. You got that promotion. You did this, you did that. You're making money, blah, blah, blah. Everything's wonderful in your life. And then once they've gotten all those kudos, they're kind of like looking at their watch and they're ready to go. Because that's what they came there for. They came there, and it's understandable. They want to have their family think well of them. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But Sifter, I have a feeling that you're a bit more of a authentic truth teller. I mean, I get that from just interacting with you anyway, here and on Discord. And I think it's why you don't say much, because you're a guy who only says something when you really have something to say, and I love that about you. I think that's awesome. I mean, I call you a kid. I mean, for a young guy, that's one of the things I really respect about you. Now, I'm sure you have struggles of various kinds, but you can really be proud of that, man. I think that's quite a little nugget of maturity in your life, to be willing to admit where you struggle. And I can honestly say that I wasn't that guy. I was the ego guy. And I do regret that. All right, N key. I'm actually thinking what time is it? Yeah, it's pushing 8 o'clock. I'm thinking I might be wrapping up here. I like what I'm seeing though. Tia, exact. Where are we supposed to find a boat? And more importantly, where are we going to find a river? Okay, this acting here might be a little over the top, and I don't think this helps. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that in favor of the second one. That is, I'm arguing that this is a better drawing because it's clear in silhouette. And more importantly, where are we going to find a river? Okay. So I'm going to go with the pose that seems to be the better silhouette. I think one of the coolest things, actually, I'll say about Sifter and Ross, Ngut 40, is it's so cool to me, and this I guess is really a compliment for both of you guys. How long you guys were lurking, or would put a little something in the chat here and there, but it's amazing to me how long you guys were around in my little circle here, where I had no idea how just freaking amazingly talented you guys are. And that says something really positive about both of you guys. And when I found out, in both cases, when I found out, I'm like, oh my God, why are these guys watching my channel? I'm like nothing. And these guys are like so talented, and just doing such great work. So anybody here who doesn't know those guys, the last two comments in the chat, Ngut 40 and Sifter, check out their channels, because those two guys are fantastic animators, and in completely different ways too. Their work and their styles and stuff are nothing alike. Sifter's more from a, I would call it kind of an anime direction for sure, I would say. And whereas Ngut 40, Ross Payne, is more of a your Disney style. I don't like saying Disney, because Disney's such a big word that it says, that if you say you're doing Disney animation, that you're doing as good as Disney, and that's a pretty tall order. And Maria's concurring, But I'm proud to call those guys my friends, because I mean, it's one of the things I love, and I actually wish would happen more here. I mean, I guess I can think of full chain animation, and obviously Ed Tadeo as being a couple other examples of, but it's very gratifying to have people come around who are so freaking much better than me, and they actually want to watch what I do, and it's kind of baffling, to me. I don't get it, but it's like, okay. But it's a lot of fun to I guess to have the respect of people that you respect. That's a lot of fun. As I said to Ross in our live stream the other day, I mean, I really do hope we can figure something out sometime that makes sense for us to maybe work on together. And mainly for me, because that's something I just haven't done. In fact, that goes back to everything I was saying about ego. I think I had such an ego problem for so much of my life that the one thing I missed out on was just collaborating with people who I really, really thought were better than me. Part of that's because I wasn't good enough to earn that, probably, to some degree, right? So I want to acknowledge that. But, God, it feels so much better to be humble and, view yourself honestly, and realize that it's very liberating. We're all works in progress. And by the way, both of those guys are really, really humble guys. They're really humble guys, Oh, you just have, okay, music videos. Well, and if you want to post something that tells people where they can see your work, of course, that's your choice if you want to. But, so I may be speaking out of turn, telling people to go check out your channel or whatever, but. Now, why in the world, this appears to be a bug to me. Why is Krita jumping to here? Why would it jump to here? I could see maybe if it's looking at all level or layers, why it might jump to there, but why jump to here on jumping to the next keyframe? And it's jumping, oh, okay. Yes, I forgot about this, so forgive me, guys. This is a Krita 5 thing, where it's kind of a cool thing, actually, is if you don't have any keyframes, Krita jumps forward by a certain number of frames just so you can sort of skip around in your animation. That's kind of useful. That's actually one of the kind of a weird Krita feature that I actually think is pretty well conceived. And then if you do that, but then hit the back previous keyframe, it'll go ahead and jump all the way back to the previous one. So if you want to jump to the keyframes in the other layer, obviously you do need to actually select that layer. Interesting stuff. So, okay, so does anybody have any questions before I sign off and call it a night? I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to chime in if some, because there's 8 people here. I have no idea who's really here But well, it just jumped down to 3. That's kind of crazy how that works. But if anybody has any questions before I call it a night, then go ahead and chime in. And otherwise, I think I'm gonna. Yeah, I'm basically sick of working on this, and I haven't made much progress in the last little bit because I've been blabbing about my deep metaphysical, philosophical mumbo jumbo. But I think this is going to shape up to be a pretty good shot. So I suppose on the next session I'll probably be doing. What did Amar say? Okay, breakdowns and tweens, I guess is the proper terminology. So, all right, with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up, save my work, and thanks everybody for hanging out. As you guys know, there will be more.